Hey guys, welcome to my this video. I did not know any of this stuff. This stuff just totally blew me away when I started looking this up. So if you look up, and of course the reason I'm making this video is because, hold on, let me fix my camera. The reason I'm making this video, oh no, too low. The reason I'm making this video obviously is to kind of, the theme of this video is that, we're all one. And it's why that is. Now, I always say that time and space is relative, but you don't really, they don't ever explain why that is. And it's like nobody ever talks about it. So this picture in the upper left is actually kind of like a picture of, the history of evolution, right? When certain things happen in the geological record. If you look back, most of the time it falls, and they're all rough estimates. And they found that like carbon dating really isn't a very accurate way to measure stuff. So all of the ways that we measure time is a little bit subjective. But, they can do measurable things to like we have to available to observe now. So like when it says it takes 230 million years to orbit the galaxy, then that's observable, right? You can measure, that's measurable. If you're reading this, you're probably already kind of understanding what I'm getting at. The ratios of space, of like a ratio to a human to Earth versus the Earth to the Kuiper Belt. So that picture next to the Earth there is the Kuiper Belt, and it's 12 trillion meters wide. Well, if the Earth is around 12.5 meters wide, then it's roughly 1 million times smaller than the Kuiper Belt. Well, a person, we are 3.5 million times smaller than the Earth. So it's about 3.5 times in difference between our size sitting on a planet that's orbiting another orbital body. Growing, if it's growing and it's inside of a growth cycle, that 3.5 number always falls into play. But the other numbers, 8.8600 times, falls into all the ratios of all orbiting bodies orbiting around another body. So for example, we have 8,700 hours in a year. And it occurred to me, I was like, okay, why did we come up with 24 hours in a day? But there's 60 minutes and 60 seconds in a minute, right? So you have two base numbers there. You have a 12 base and a 60 base. And if you look it up, Wikipedia and everybody will tell you, well, the Babylonians and these other older cultures came up with base 12 and base 60 because they could count it on their hands. That can't be true when you look at the bigger picture, because if you look and see, for one thing, how did they know that compared to our galaxy, that everything revolved around this? Did they know that the sun was 8,600 times smaller than the Kuiper Belt? Did they know that a solar day was 8,600 to 8,800 times smaller? So it's literally like the number of hours to make it around our sun for the Earth is 8,700 hours. It's the same ratio of the sun to the Kuiper Belt. Now, the ratio of the Earth to the Kuiper Belt is a little bit different, but the ratio of time remains the same. And when you're looking at the small thing in the center compared to the larger thing, then, sorry guys, I forgot to turn off my phone. Anyway, so the ratio of everything revolves around this 8,700 number, and the only way to come to that is to become to a base 12 half cycle scenario, right? Because you've got 12 months in a year, but it's all base 12. So a half cycle is almost like 6 if you look at it, but at the same time it's a 12 base, right? So night and day equal 24. 1 year, I mean, you could say that you could look at it half months, right? I mean, you could count 24 half months and it would still equal 24, but, and then, you know, so that equals days, because a day is a cycle. 1 day is 24 hours. That's a 12, you know, that's a 12 cycle, or a base 12. Same thing that our months is. It's divided into base 12. Now, you could argue that, you know, months are a little bit different, but concept's all the same, right? It's that ratio of time and space is exactly the same, which means that time and space are exactly relative. It means that as things are expanding, it's expanding exactly relative to time and space. So things are moving at the same ratio as they are distant from each other. That's why everything is one. Because when it all breaks down, that's why quantum physics works the way it does. And it's the reason why particle physics has never caught up to that, because they haven't recognized that everything is just a structure in a field that's moving relative to its size. You and I. It's like when you're looking into somebody else's eyes, you're looking into yourself. And the only thing that's keeping you distant is this illusion of time and space. And it is an illusion because it's all exactly the same. Those ratios between time relative to space are exactly the same. The times that it takes for things to rotate around each other, and the frequencies that are created in those structures are relative to their size. Now, which brings it up an interesting point. If you're raising your frequency, then you're getting pulled out of that dimensional space. Not only that, but you might be connecting with higher dimensions, but that's also how things grow, is when things line up, when you're connected to the center of the field. Because if you notice that picture at the top, that field is collapsing and spiraling inward, and everything is coming from and going back to that one spot. That's another indicator that everything is coming one. And the only thing that is making this illusion of time and space is when you pull it apart. That's why you have a positive and negative field. On that upper right hand, you see I've got a cycle there, which is the 26,000 year cycle. And we're right at the end of that one where we're coming from the negative phase right into the equatorial plane. And the reason that is a 1 solar day is because if you think about the solar system corkscrewing through the galaxy, that's your sun, that's the sun and the whole solar system spinning in one revolution as it's moving around the galaxy. Exact same that the Earth is doing around our sun, right? A solar day would then be that one rotation, that 26,000 year cycle, which is the equivalent of an Earth day, right? 24 hours, 26,000 years. That's why hours have to be divided into 12 like that, and years are 360. It's a base 12. Everything's base 12 when you're measuring the day rotation, and then base 8760 when you're measuring the ratio of that orbital body to the hole. Super interesting. Even when you measure your own heart rate against the day and yearly cycle, how many heart rates are in a day? If your heart rate is at 60 beats per minute, then you're beating 3,600 times 24, which is like 86,000 beats per day. 860 pops up, or 870, 880. It's all pretty close. I mean, it's probably exactly the same. It's just so difficult. I mean, obviously 230 million years to orbit the galaxy is a rounded number. So if you had that exact number, there's no doubt that it would line up exactly with all the other numbers in this problem. And for one thing, a year isn't exactly 760 hours. That's just 24 hours times 365, right? Not every year is 365 days. In our Gregorian calendar, we have to, we have to create a leap year to make up for the loss of 365, measuring years in 365 days. But if you had a perfect calculated measurement, all these calculations would line up. The ratio of your body to cells. I encourage you guys to look it up. Figure out what the ratio of body to cells are, the ratio of cells to atoms. All those ratios line up. They're all exactly the same. So every time you look smaller and smaller and smaller, you have something that's vibrating faster and faster and faster. And every time you look out, you have cycles that run longer and longer and longer. So what does this all mean? And why am I making this video? And how does this apply to you? It's all very, educational and conjecture until you really start to really think about the real world and what's happening around us, why it's happening, and the fact that we are all one. Now, how do you become one with each other? Obviously, I love when people post video or post comments like this, and I've seen more and more of these posts on social media about how love conquers all. And this is true. And I can say that I love you, but until I become vulnerable and I start to reveal the deeper parts of me and maybe ways that I'm feeling and staying in non-judgment, then you never really go closer to somebody. You never get to a point of understanding. And when you tell somebody, it's like, hey, whatever you got to do it for yourself. Whatever it is that you need to do to make yourself feel whole. I won't feed off of you. I don't need your time unless you want to share your time with me. Because that healing process is all about breaking down conflicts of the body and making sure that that people love you unconditionally. And trusting that everything's going to be okay. That's the only reason that people don't partner together. And it's those old structures. I was having a conversation with this good friend of mine. He's a coach, been a coach for quite a few years now, and he started following another group. And because more and more of the businesses are starting to have higher and higher problems. There's more and more people leaving big business, and that's because, this is very obvious to all of you probably watching this video, that the people that do the most work in big business are getting paid the least amount. Now, you could argue that at the executive level, I'm doing more work because I'm having to manage more stuff. But the only reason you're having to manage that energy and those people and that time of those people is because those people aren't following their heart. They're doing something for somebody else. They're doing somebody else's idea. They're building something for somebody else's idea. So they're under stress. Their heart's under stress. And because there's an imbalance in what somebody's getting paid, there's an imbalance in what their perceived worth and value is. All that stress gets collected at the executive. And so it feels like you have to keep hiring more managers, right, to manage the stress of the whole system. And now there's so much stress in the system that people work a 9-to-5 job for a week, and there's so much stress, you got to just let go for the weekend. Screw it. I'm just going to relax. Right? Now, you never get to a state where you have time to heal and reflect and say, hey, look, I'm worth just as much as anybody else. And see it from a larger perspective. Why is this not working? And it's because people are not being equally valued. I had a meeting with him, and he was talking, it was going over every single point that they're trying to teach executives in order to help their companies, discipline, group decision making, making sure that people are held accountable, except for one thing: mutual incentive. If there's not mutual incentive, then why would I go to work for somebody that thinks that their incentive is more than mine? especially if I'm doing a lot of the work for them. How does that make sense? That's what the system's going through right now. It's breaking down. There is no way that you can heal a system that is imbalanced from the outside. You have to create new systems of mutual incentive, mutual accountability, and people working together, or you're just wasting your time. I mean, coaches and consultants became coaches and consultants because of that problem, because they didn't want to make somebody else a bunch of money. And so now the industry, the whole industry is a giant web of imbalanced structures, coaches and consultants, and sales professionals. That's it. It's nothing else. I mean, either it's an imbalanced business producing something for the community, and because it's imbalanced, it's usually creating an imbalanced product to put more money into the person's pockets at the top. And most people, the people that don't want to work for that structure are coaches and consultants that are trying to limp that structure along, trying to bleed off the stress of that system because it's not working. I mean, how many executive coaches are there out there? Why does an executive need a coach? If his business was sound and it was a sound structure, it would self-regulate. A sound mind and body will self-regulate. I don't need somebody to tell me what to do if I have a sound mind and body, do I? Right? I mean, it is what it is. Until we figure this out, and the hardest part, especially for me, and I'll be perfectly vulnerable and honest with you, is that when you can see the bigger picture and you can see it from the outside, that you have to be patient, because you have to realize that people working within that system and staying as in all of those positions, generally their intent is pretty good. It's just they're still in that system that is causing them stress, right? The stress of having to sell yourself to each other all the time, the stress of having to bleed off all that negative energy. Because I mean, if you look at this picture, look at where we came from and where we were. So like if you look at the first part of that, the top sine wave and the top right-hand part of this graph, where it starts with a Piscean Aquarius cusp and goes to the legal Virgo cusp. In the positive side or part of the biofield of the Taurus field, the galactic Taurus field, half of a solar day, 13,000 years, right? 12,000 years, somewhere in there, 12 to 13,000 years. And if you reduce it to hours, then it's going to be an 8760 number, right? I mean, it's so crazy. But it was in the positive side. So that means that every being in that field had a creative tendency versus a consuming tendency, right? Negative is you're pulling things towards you. Positive is you're providing, you're pouring things out of you. So this is my creative circuit going up. This is my attractive circuit coming to the bottom. So I'm basically creating more than I'm eating, which means that money wouldn't even exist in that environment before 13,000 years ago, which is commonly understood as the age of Atlantis. People, it's like, well, we're starting to find out that there was a much more advanced civilization during that time that collapsed, but the poles swapped, right? Because it went through the galactic plane. So whenever that goes to the galactic plane, the field collapses, just like an electrical circuit. The field collapses, more energy and information run through the circuit, and then wherever it comes out on the other side of the field, because at the center of the field there's no field, right? It's exactly like a generator or any other electrical circuit, a motor, you name it. Every alternating circuit works exactly the same. You're creating a field and a difference of potential. And so there's greater difference of potential in the charged field. It's like a capacitor. You're building a charge, but then when the charge collapses, that's when all the current runs through the system. Boom. High frequency, blasted. But there'd be no need for money, right? So on the top side, as you're going from the Pisces Aquarius cusp to the top of that arc, that's springtime. Everything's boom, blossoming. That's what we're getting ready to go into. But we got to go through the middle of the field first. Anyway, you're boom, blossoming, everything growing from the inside out. And then as it gets to the top, now we're in summertime. Now we're in kind of a stale period where everything that has been created is now blossomed and showing and blooming. And it's just staying there. And then close to the end, it starts to collapse. Now, all those creations start to kind of come in conflict with each other because everybody's in creative mode, but it's slowing down because for whatever reason, right? I mean, you can make some assumptions, and actually, if you do a lot of research on Aquarian Age and some of the writings from that time, there's many books about it. I can't remember the name of it, but it has a lot to do with, Hermes, all the Hermic laws and the stuff associated with the Hermic laws. You could say that was from the Aquarian Age. What happened at the end there, cataclysms, their creations destroyed them. Now you've fallen into darkness, right? Boom. Now you're in the negative field. Everything's feeding off of each other more. And the last thing that is feeding off one another is the last manifestation of that is money. Think about what's happened in the last 10 or even like two years. It's getting harder and harder to feed off of each other because the inflation rate's going up, which means that everyone is forced into trust and love. Have to be. If you're not going in that direction, you're still staying isolated. You're not feeling like you can trust one another. That's all it is. That's how the whole system, there's nothing wrong with any part of it, right? And when we think about it, it's really beautiful. But it means that in order to master yourself, it forces you to get into higher and higher states of awareness. This is something that I think all these ascended masters, including Jesus, understood that he was a creator. And in order to break down these needs of hunger to feed off your environment, there were ways to do that. Prayer and fasting, meditating and fasting, making sure that you're falling out of need and want and desire. And just staying in the moment, being present. That enables you to be available for anybody at any time. And you become the creator, right? We're moving out of the negative cycle. But we're going to have to go. So now think about what's going to happen, if you applied a system where we were all working equally together. And people knew this. People understood intuitively, this is what we need. We need to leave those old business models behind. Let's just start working together to create something to empower other people to be creative as well, which is what I'm promoting. And feel to reach out to me if you'd like to know more about the project, if you'd like to be a part of that project. I'd love to talk to you about it. Now, if you haven't done the inner work and you're still internally trying to feed off of the people around you in some way, now that system's going in overdrive. It's like creating an antibody in the body. And so the body looks temporarily healed, but then all the cells that haven't healed start to break down and die, which is what happens. Your body, when you have antibodies and your body starts creating new cells, it's creating new cells, but all the old cells have to be flushed out of the system. So this is happening internally and externally at the same time, which is exactly like if you read the book of Revelation, which I believe is a true story, it's telling that story. All of a sudden, world peace. Now you have 3 years where everything just looks like it is coming apart. But looked at from a higher perspective, that's how things grow. Things die and then blossom from the inside out. Now that doesn't mean that you might physically die, but it does mean that you're going to at the same time. So you can actually, and this is something that I think Jesus figured out, right? He fasted because you're killing the body's need for hunger to recreate itself. If everything's instantaneously connected, like I'm saying in this video, in space and time, between every point in space-time, then you're whole. There's no part of you that isn't whole. Space and time is an illusion, and these ratios are proving that to be the case in every way. I hope this makes sense for you guys, right? I wanted to make a more of a video to really kind of break this down. You know, it's very hard to get information from your environment that's not congruent with reality, because everybody, if you're in some kind of state of conflict or in any kind of delusion at all, it's putting you in a situation where you're in conflict with your environment, right? It's the illusion of separation, which will put you in conflict in some way. So you'll feel like you need to lift yourself up, or feel like you are lower than something else around, or something else. Nothing else is. It's just evolving and growing over millions of years into something that's starting to become self-aware. Pretty cool, actually. I looked in the old geological record, from the last extinction level events, and they're all pretty close to quarter cycles. If you look at the 230 million year mark, I think it could be anywhere from 20 million to 240 million, somewhere in there. If you break it down, and it's probably closer to like 225 million or something to create that perfect number where it's the number of days, the number of solar days are closer to 8,700 or 8,760. It's probably 8,800 exactly, if I were to guess. If you look at those two numbers, I mean, look, that one's 8,846 and the other one's 8,760. And a leap year would add hours to that, right? So it would be closer to 8,800. I'm guessing a solar day is actually, or the number of solar days it takes to get around the galaxy is probably exactly 8,800 times 26,000 exactly. So that's the number. If you look in the geological record, those are major extinction events. 240, they say it was 240 million years ago. I'm guessing it was probably 225 million years ago. 66 million years ago, a quarter cycle of that. Another major extinction level event where there was a mass evolution of consciousness resulting in higher structures moving more information and energy, have more impact on their environment. Very cool story. Love you guys. Hope you guys liked this video. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And if you'd like to support me, please buy my book, There Is Only One Heart, by Brian Curtis. It's for sale on Amazon. I don't think it's available at Barnes & Noble yet. It's tells a lot about this story, about how we're all interconnected and how there's truly only one heart, and that, the pain of the illusion of separation. So many of us, accept that from our environment when somebody rejects us or refuses to work together with us, or wants to protect their own interests instead of, doing something for the larger whole and trying to, invest in one another. So, it's just because someone's holding on to pain. It's really not their fault. It's, it's some kind of illusion of separation where it feels like you need to lift yourself up from the people around you. I love you guys. Have a wonderful day, and take care. Bye.